and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Woo! How's it going out there, boys and girls in college football? Outlaw Posse, the Common Joes and Common Sallies in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. Heading into week 11, man, it just seems like yesterday was in the middle of summer, middle of spring, college football season. We're just chomping at the bit to get to it, and boom, like I've always said, like a blink of an eye, boom. Goes by like a blink of an eye, don't it? Today we're going to come in here and we're going to do a few predictions just to get us through the week, wet our taste a little bit. I'm going to bring a guest in here tonight, Jeremy Smith. I know him from a couple of big Facebook groups that he helps run. I think College Football Universe is one of them, and he has a few other ones. I'll let him give those in just a second. But we're going to talk a little bit about everybody tonight. We're going to do the Alabama game, Oklahoma game. Oregon's playing Maryland, LSU, and Alabama, of course, Oklahoma and Missouri, Texas and Florida, Nebraska versus USC. And we may even touch a little bit on the Florida Gators as well, as they give that dreaded vote of confidence today. Now, I don't know if it's the dreaded vote of confidence or they actually signed him to another couple of years or extended his contract or something. But anyway, the athletic director come out and basically said that Billy Napier was going to be given at least one more year with the Florida Gators. We'll talk about that as well, some of the coaching carousel rumors and hot seats, and we'll get Jeremy's take and see what he thinks about all that as well. We already got a few guys up in here. Rye Guy 1218, he says, have my country back, USA, USA. I reckon he's talking about that hat right up there. I'm not going to get too much into that tonight. I don't want to piss too many people off. We're going to try to talk about sports mainly. But, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring Jeremy in here now, and maybe we're going to start talking about the Alabama-LSU matchup, and then we'll progress onward as long as he has to stay in here. So let's bring Jeremy Smith in the house. How's it going, brother?
Outlaw, thank you so much for having me on tonight with you. First time around your show, but really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to chatting a little college football with you.
That's right. I've seen you do a couple of Facebook, I don't know what they're called. They don't call them podcasts. I've seen you do streams of some sort. I'm not sure what the terminology is that Facebook uses for it, but I've actually seen you do a few shows, and you seem well-spoken, so I decided to bring you on here.
I appreciate it. I've been in a couple of Facebook groups. The one that you mentioned, College Football Universe, pretty good one. We got about 17,000 in there. And then I have one that I started about a year ago. Haven't quite hit the 500 mark on that one yet, but called Southern Sports Focus. And we talk a lot about, college, NFL, baseball, all the Southern teams there. So, love your stuff, man. And really looking forward to talking with you tonight. Thank you. I
appreciate you being on. A lot of people, I think they're a little scared to be on my show sometimes. I'm a little abrasive is what they say. So I'll try not to be too abrasive tonight. But, yeah, you said College Football Universe. That's one of the bigger Facebook groups, one of the first ones that I ever joined on Facebook. I run one myself called the National F-Bomb, but I really don't pay attention as much as I used to it. But, yeah, that was one of the first college football groups I joined on Facebook. You said it's got how many members again?
We're approaching 17,000, I think. I know we got well over 16,000 at least.
All right. So, yeah, y'all check that Facebook group out. Is there any channels that you maybe starting or business you want to plug tonight?
No, we'll just get into the discussion about the football. As far as mainly what I do is the Facebook groups. Might branch out one day, but I'm married with 3 kids, so I don't have a lot of time for a lot of things. So,
how old are your kids?
16, 11, and 6.
16, 11, and 6, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you still got a ways to go. Mine are grown.
Yes,
so. I'm going to bring up a few things here, but is there anything that you maybe want to start out with before I bring up some stats that I found on the internet?
Sure. Well, let's talk about the LSU Alabama game. And one point I made in the video I made in College Football Universe today, like all games, quarterback play is going to be so important. And both teams, they got to be concerned because since the Georgia game, Jalen Milroe has thrown 3 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. and he lost the fumble in the Vanderbilt loss. So he has been struggling since that Georgia win. Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback, he in his last 4 games has thrown 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Both these teams have the ability to force their quarterbacks to make mistakes. In the Texas A&M game, Nussmeier, he got sacked twice, which was as many as they'd allowed all season before that game, and he threw 3 second-half interceptions. So it's going to come a lot down to quarterback play and who can take care of the ball the best. Now, that sounds kind of a cliche for a football game, but that's really what it's going to come down to a lot in this one. Who takes care of the ball better, especially with those quarterbacks. You get Nussmeier uncomfortable, get him out of the pocket. He throws bad passes. We've all seen as Alabama fans what happens when you pressure Jalen Milroe, the disaster that can be. So, they're going to have to play better than they have. And whoever improves the most over the past, as they have the past 2 weeks, I think is going to win that ball game. For the defenses, both have had their issues. Alabama's done a little bit better lately. I know they had a backup quarterback against Missouri, but they were executing a little bit better, and they forced 3 or more turnovers in 4 of the last 5 games, and LSU has turned the ball over multiple times in a number of games. And the one thing that I like about Alabama in this is LSU struggled against running quarterbacks. And we saw what Lenora Sellers did to them in the South Carolina game, and then Marcel Reed for Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago. We know Jalen Milroe can run the football. So if he can run the ball well, get to the edges, which LSU is really bad at defending against, I think LSU might be in trouble. But young secondary for Alabama, they might be in trouble because LSU can pass the ball. They got one of the best passing offenses in the conference.
Yeah, would you say our defense, the weak spot, is it the secondary, or where would you say the weak spot is on the defense?
The secondary, the problem with it is the youth. Keon Saab is going to be out of this game. He's not going to play, so that's going to be a big blow. But you've got Jackson. There's some talent back there, but LSU has the ability to throw the ball deep, and we have seen in a number of games where there's been plays to be made, and the opponents just missed them. Overthrowing with the quarterback on the receiver, not hitting the target. I don't think you can rely on that with LSU. They've got some really good receivers like Aaron Anderson, and then Nussmeier is able to hit those deep passes. So they've got to cover better, and they've got to make Nussmeier feel uncomfortable and get him out of the pocket. Another weakness that I don't think LSU can take advantage of is we've seen runs on the perimeter be kind of a liability. The defense has not been able to get to the edge that well. In the Tennessee loss, Dylan Sampson pretty much took over in the second half, and they were able to run the ball. In fact, in Alabama's 2 losses, Vanderbilt and Tennessee, both teams were able to run the ball effectively against the Tide defense. Fortunately for the Tide, LSU has not really been able to run the ball that well all season. So, they're going to have to rely on the aerial game. I think that, they may be able to take some big plays from Alabama, but Alabama's been kind of having a ball-hawking defense lately. So I think if they can get pressure on Nussmeier, that there's some defensive plays to be had there.
So would you think, is Nussmeier, does he have a scrambling ability about him? Is he more of a pocket passer? What is he?
I mean, he's a little bit more of a pocket passer, especially compared to Milroe. I have seen him a few times be able to get out of the pocket, but he's just not as fast. He has been able to make some plays here and there with his legs, but he's not a running quarterback at all. If they allow him to stay in the pocket, they're going to pick him. I mean, he's going to pick them apart. So they've got to make him uncomfortable. They've got to get him out of the pocket, and they've just they've got to get that pressure because again, his last 4 games, he has thrown 7 interceptions, 9 on the season, which is second worst in the SEC.
Yep, and I also think that this game, I think it goes without saying, it's pretty captain obvious that this is probably an elimination game for both these teams. Whoever loses this game more than likely not going to get in the playoffs. I think it's more imperative for LSU to win this game because Kalen DeBoer is still in his first season. I know Brian Kelly's had a decent record at LSU, but he really hasn't won anything. He hasn't won the SEC title, and so that, obviously that means he ain't won a national title. I don't even think he ain't even made the playoffs yet, right? So I think he loses this game to Alabama on the road, knocks them out of the playoffs. And there's been some stuff behind the scenes, from what I understand from a few of my buddies in the know. They was talking about there was some stuff on the staff with somebody. Can't remember her name, but there was somebody on the staff that had been on Brian Kelly's staff for quite some times that he dismissed, and there's been some smoke about that. So if they lose this game, as good as Brian Kelly's record is, I think he might be in trouble at LSU.
I don't know if they would fire him, but I mean that's definitely going to be something to look for, because the thing about Brian Kelly, and we saw this in Notre Dame, we saw this at LSU, and yes, he had some success in Notre Dame. He made it to the national championship game for the 2012 season, but we've talked about like in the Big Ten, the struggles that Ryan Day and James Franklin and coaches like that have had in big games. Kelly's had some similar struggles. His record's a little bit better because he's been around longer than those guys, but you look at just some of the games that he's lost, and they've been games that could have taken them to the next level. Last year, that defense was just horrible. The offense was dynamic. So he's just really had a hard time putting both sides of the ball together at once. This season, once again, the offense is really good passing the ball, but they have virtually no running game. And the defense, while improved from the disaster that it was last season, they're still near the bottom of the conference in a lot of categories. I think they're like 11th against the run and a similar ranking against the pass. So there's still teams that have been able to take advantage of their defense. And I think that Alabama, with some of the talent they have, if the offensive line plays well, they're going to be able to make those big plays. The one good thing about the LSU defense is they're really good at getting to the quarterback. They're top 10 in the nation and getting to the QB in sacks. And again, we've seen what happens to Jalen Milroe if he gets pressured. So the offensive line has really got to step up for Alabama to win this. But I think it is, as you mentioned, it is an elimination game. Whoever loses this game is probably out of the playoff race. You're probably looking at maybe the Citrus Bowl, or whatever they're calling it now. What used to be the Outback Bowl, I don't remember the name now, but one of those Florida Bowls or something like that, and probably looking at a 9-3 regular season. But it's a very important game for both teams, especially for Brian Kelly, because as you mentioned, they have not made the playoff. And for a lot of fan bases, you get into that year 3, that's when they start to wonder, okay, have we got the right guy if he does not meet those expectations?
Yeah, exactly. And now that there's 12 spots, it's really imperative that you make the playoffs, because at that point, you really aren't doing your job, especially with the money he's being paid. And LSU has the second most national titles this century, only behind Alabama, and they've done it under 3 different head coaches. If LSU could just get their shit together for a little while and keep a coach for a little while with a little bit of a moral compass, LSU could be a dynasty, in my opinion. But they keep hiring these coaches that just something comes up in the in workings and behind the scenes stuff. Like now with Brian Kelly, there's smoke there about this female staffer that maybe something went on right there. That's something that we'll have to just wait and see on.
Well, LSU's it's always been interesting to watch because they're in such fertile recruiting ground. Louisiana has a lot of talent. You've got it right there with Texas, that pipeline, and they've always recruited well. But when Nick Saban took over, they were kind of a mess. They'd had 3 winning seasons in 10 years. Of course, he had some success there, won a national championship. Les Miles had a national championship. But for the amount of talent they get, they have a lot of seasons where they're just kind of average. A lot of 8-win, a lot of 9-win. Brian Kelly, he's done pretty well overall. But once again, in this 3rd year, LSU fans going in were thinking playoff, especially in this expanded format. And they're on the cusp now being eliminated. And we see the games that they've lost. That USC loss looks even worse every week because the Trojans just stink out loud. And they don't really have just this huge win, maybe aside from Ole Miss, where you just look at them and you go, wow, look at the Tigers, watch out for them. They did beat Ole Miss, but they lost to Texas A&M. And I think that really damaged their playoff hopes, especially with A&M losing to South Carolina. So especially for the Tigers and Brian Kelly, this is a must-win game. I think with Bama, of course, there's going to be a lot of disappointment if they lose. But once again, the first-year Kalen DeBoer, there's going to be a certain aspect of the fan base. You've seen them. They're going to cry and be up in arms about him and all this. But, for the amount of guys that left the team when Saban retired, and there's been some inconsistent play, but still, I think Kalen DeBoer's done a solid job overall. And I'll say one thing before we move on to possibly the next topic is, people are talking about the penalties and the undisciplined play and blaming DeBoer for that. And yes, the coaching staff does bear some responsibility, but this is nothing new. We saw a lot of this in 2021, in 2022. Even last year, 2023. Alabama has been one of the worst penalized teams in the SEC for multiple years now. So some of the undisciplined play is nothing new. Even under the great Nick Saban, we saw it. So I think a lot of fans forget that, and they blame DeBoer exclusively for things falling apart. Well, no, they haven't fallen apart, and the sloppy play is nothing new. So I think this is something that bears mentioning as the season rolls on.
Yeah, I done a podcast about that, and just told them stop bringing up Nick Saban. Stop comparing him to Nick Saban and saying this wouldn't have happened under Nick Saban, because it absolutely did happen under Nick Saban.
Exactly.
The previous defensive coordinator, what's his name again? The ones at Ole Miss now?
Pete Golding.
Pete Golding. The whole time he was a defensive coordinator here, man, it was just undisciplined play the whole time.
Yeah.
And the guy had a DUI, and he still kept him on staff. I think a lot of this stuff was masked by the fact that we pulled out a few games probably here and there that we shouldn't have. We all know we should have probably lost that Auburn game last year, for example. There was numerous games last year that we probably should have lost, and probably we should have been about an 8-14. We sort of backed into the playoffs, to be honest with you. Although we looked really good against Georgia, for whatever reason, Georgia has an Alabama problem. It's not a Nick Saban problem anymore. It's just an Alabama problem. And that brings me to something else I want to talk about. If Alabama does beat LSU, goes on to win out, and it comes down to Alabama and another 2-loss team, more than likely that win over Georgia is as crazy as this might sound, because I dislike Georgia a lot. We sort of need to root for Georgia to win, because that win over Georgia right now looks really good, and it sort of maybe pushes away some of the Vanderbilt stigma, although Vanderbilt is now bowl eligible, right, and they almost beat Texas. So that loss to Vanderbilt don't look quite as bad now. So I think if it's between Alabama and another 2-loss team from another conference, I think Alabama gets in over because of the fact they beat Georgia.
More than likely. I mean, you can talk about the SEC all you want to, and some people say it's overrated and whatnot, but still, like it or not, the conference still is going to carry a lot of weight with the committee. And if Georgia keeps winning, if Vandy keeps winning, if Tennessee keeps winning, that the Tennessee-Georgia game is going to be kind of a wash, because Alabama's played both of them, whoever wins that. But I think it would be a little bit better for Georgia to win, since Alabama did get that victory. But, the teams they played, like, again, Georgia, Vandy, and Tennessee, as long as those teams keep winning and Alabama keeps winning, they're going to be in that spot. And I think a lot of projections now, they have them like at 11th, possibly playing Texas in the first round. I think that, we got a long time before we really have to worry about that. But I think that if Alabama keeps winning, probably 9 to 11 range is probably where they're going to land in the playoff field.
Yeah, and another thing I like to compare to, and it's probably won't happen, but if it were to happen, if Alabama and Notre Dame, if it come down to Alabama and Notre Dame for that one playoff spot, because there's going to be one given to a G5 school, so really there's only 11 spots. But
right.
Would you put Alabama in over Notre Dame if they only had one loss and Alabama had 2 losses? The reason why I asked that is because the Northern Illinois loss has actually turned into such a bad loss now.
Right.
Northern Illinois has went on to lose to teams like Buffalo, and I think maybe was the other one's Miami of Ohio or somebody like that. They've lost like 4 games now. They're like 4-4 in a very weak conference, and they beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. Does that one loss by Notre Dame look bad enough to put a 2-loss Alabama team in over Notre Dame?
I don't have Notre Dame's schedule in front of me, but I don't really see where their huge signature win is so far. I'm just working off memory here, but there's not a win on their schedule where you're just like, wow. And I don't know if there will be one, because they play that kind of quasi ACC schedule, and then they have those other teams that they fill in with. Their toughest game remaining, I don't know, might be USC, who's not that great.
They play Army, and Army's undefeated.
Yeah. But Army's G5. So
Army hadn't beat nobody really.
Yeah. So you never know what the committee's going to do. I mean, who thought last year that Alabama was going to get in over an undefeated FSU team? I mean, I was a little surprised by that. Didn't complain, of course, because full disclosure, I'm an Alabama fan. But still, that was something that surprised me. So you never know what the committee is going to do. Somebody just put there, Daniel, there, the Aggies, their best win. That's right. That's spot on. And now that one doesn't look as great because South Carolina beat the stuffing out of them last week. And they still got some tough games left. They've got to play against Texas. I think that is at College Station. But still, that's going to be a tough test for them. But Notre Dame with that loss there, it puts really things kind of in a state of uncertainty because you will have this Alabama possibly 2-loss team with that Georgia win. And I don't think that Notre Dame's going to have a win that's that impressive. Maybe A&M, but A&M now has 2 losses. To Notre Dame and then the South Carolina, and it wouldn't shock me at all if they get another one. I think they still have LSU left to play. Would not surprise me at all if the Tigers beat them. This time of year, they release these ratings, and there's just so much we still don't know. There's so many scenarios we can play out. So we just kind of have to let it ride and see what happens. But I can't say for certainty that a 2-loss Alabama team would get in over Notre Dame with 1 loss, but it would not surprise me at all.
Yep, I mean, and almost forgot about that Aggies win. It's been so far back, I didn't, so everybody's done forgot about them beating Texas A&M on the road. But Texas, I haven't really been impressed with Texas. Up until they played Georgia, they had played a couple of teams that were good in name only. Michigan and Oklahoma really are not the same Michigan and Oklahoma that they used to be. So beating those 2 teams really wasn't that great to me. And then when they finally play a decent team, they get beat by double digits at home. And now they're playing Florida. And I told everybody this last week, if DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt in the first half, Florida might win that game over Georgia. And hell, with a transfer from Yale late in the fourth quarter, they're tied with them 20-20. And I was like, just that alone should keep Billy Napier for another season. And the way the guys had so many bad breaks and injuries, and they give him a hell of a schedule. give Texas a huge solid. And Texas got an easier schedule than most everybody. So if Lagway plays in that game, Florida could upset Texas, in my opinion. But
I think it's a possibility. I mean, the term that was used for Texas in the college football playoff rankings, the initial rankings by some commentators, was overvalued. And I think Texas has a lot of talent. I think that they are a team that is capable of making the playoff. But you look at their resume, there's not anything there that you're just wowed by. And then the one opportunity they get to really showcase themselves. I mean, and you talk about how bad that game was for them. Georgia didn't play that well. Carson Beck had 3 interceptions.
He's doing that a lot here lately, ain't he?
Yeah, that was not Georgia's A game at all. That was probably Georgia's B- game at best. I still might be being generous. And they still beat Texas by 15 at home. So, you look at Texas and you're like, okay, yeah, they've only got 1 loss. They've got a lot of talent. So, if they win out, they'll make the playoff. But I would be very concerned as a Texas fan looking at that and thinking, how far can we really go? And some of these games we have left, like Texas A&M College Station, if the Aggies can figure their stuff out, that's going to be a very dangerous game. That could be for a playoff spot at the end of the season there. So the Texas is a team that's one of those they could probably, if they have their A game, beat anyone, but they could lose a lot of games that are left if they don't show up. And I know you can say that about any contender, but Texas especially, because we just really don't know on the field how good they are. On paper, they look pretty good. But on the field, again, the first big test they had, they didn't look great at all. And I think that's something the committee really has to look at as this gets sorted out more, is what do you do with Texas if they continue to struggle against inferior teams?
Yeah, I saw some crazy stat about Carson Beck that he was the first major college quarterback to ever win back-to-back games with 3 interceptions, back-to-back games. That's crazy, ain't it?
And I don't think that can continue. They're against Ole Miss this week in Oxford. If he throws 3 interceptions again, I think they're going to get beat. And one thing about that game, the magic number in that game is 285. And what I mean for that, that's for Ole Miss. Ole Miss is 7-0 this season when they've thrown for 285 yards or more. They are 0-2 in the games they have not. Those wins against, or those losses against Kentucky and LSU, they had less than 285 yards passing. So, they've got to be able to throw the football. Georgia's been pretty good. I think they're like fourth in the SEC in pass defense. They've only allowed over 235 yards twice. That was against Mississippi State, and then against Alabama, and that loss they allowed 374. So the Rebels have got to be able to pass that ball well. Jackson Dart, spreading out and not making mistakes. But the Dogs, they've been pretty good against the pass, except for those a couple of games there. So that's Kiffin and Smart scheming against each other. That's going to be really something that's going to be exciting to watch. I'm looking forward to that game. But again, I think if they can get the 285 to 300 passing range, I think Georgia's in trouble.
All right. So before we move on, I'm going to backtrack for a second to the Alabama LSU game. I forgot to get I was going to get your prediction and what you thought was going to happen, who you thought was going to win the game, and what was going to be the telltale that's going to be the reason why that your team that you're predicting to win is going to win.
Well, what it's going to come down to, again, is some of the things already mentioned. And one more thing that I think is going to be key to the game. LSU has been fantastic on third down. They lead the SEC in third down conversions. Alabama, we've seen, have been very up and down. In SEC play, opponents have converted nearly 42% of their attempts. That's 12th in the league versus conference opponents. So Alabama's got to play better on third down. Jalen Milroe has got to run the ball well because, again, we saw South Carolina, a game that LSU, frankly, should have lost. And if Nora Sellers had stayed in, I think they would have gotten beat. And then the A&M game where Marcel Reed comes in, and he just, in that limited play, scores 3 rushing touchdowns and has a number of big runs. So I think if Jalen Milroe, they've got to run him early and get him to the edge and set up the passing game. If they can do that, I think Alabama has a really good shot at winning this ball game. And I just don't know how sustainable this LSU offense is, especially if Nussmeier keeps making mistakes. Again, they throw the ball really well, but they have no running game. So if Alabama can focus on the pass and make some defensive plays, get an interception or two, I think that's what's going to happen. I think that, Alabama, we know the stat, like 29-10-2 in Baton Rouge. I think that they're going to step up. I think they've been able, and this may just be optimism as a fan, but I think that they've been able to figure out some things against Missouri with some of the defensive play they had. Again, I know Missouri's not great on offense, had the backup QB, but you just saw they were executing better. Didn't look quite as lost at times. And with that off week, I think they've been able to figure some things out. I think Alabama wins a close one. I think you're going to see a game of around 30-28 or something like that. Tide is going to win.
Yeah, Alabama is actually favored by 2.5. And some article I saw a while ago has actually got them at 3. So that it may have went up some. LSU has just been so lucky this year in some of the wins they've had. They shouldn't have beat South Carolina. And me as an Alabama fan, because we lost to Vanderbilt and the stigma of losing to Vanderbilt put such a bad taste in my mouth, and then we struggled against South Carolina the week after that, it just made everybody think that these players just weren't playing up to par or like they should, because the two names aren't very well known names in college football. And then we come to find out that Vanderbilt ain't that bad.
Yeah.
South Carolina ain't that bad. Ain't nobody in this conference that bad this year. As a matter of fact, that's why I said, man, people were taking turns taking each other out. Games that you're not supposed to win, like Alabama beating Georgia, you're winning. And the games you're not supposed to lose, you lose to Vanderbilt. Ole Miss beats LSU. Well, no, they beat LSU. They beat South Carolina, but then they turn around and lose to Kentucky, who got housed by South Carolina in their own place.
Yeah.
Ole Miss lost to Kentucky.
but don't forget Outlaw. Mississippi State and Auburn, they're pretty bad. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we might have a few of them that's pretty bad this year. Then, Mississippi State and Auburn's pretty bad, man. I don't know what to say about Mississippi State and Auburn, but you've seen flashes from Mississippi State this year. They actually started playing a little bit better, and then they sort of digressed. I think it was last week or so, but they played Georgia pretty tight. They seem like they're getting better. They're just not winning games. Auburn, I don't know what they're going to do at Auburn, man. They dismissed that one guy that was from Boise State, Ryan Harsin, after 2 seasons, and now they're talking about getting rid of Hugh Freeze after 2 seasons. That's not a way to. I don't. Auburn's always been like it, though.
I think that getting rid of Hugh Freeze is a little overstated by some. I mean, I don't think they're going to get rid of him this year unless they just lose every game by blowout from now on. But, Auburn, for all their faults, they've put together a really good recruiting class so far. And so I think he'll get at least another year, maybe two, to see what he can do with the players that he has brought in. But Auburn boosters are not patient people. We've seen that. We know that. So it's really just going to depend on the powers over there if they are patient enough to see what Hugh Freeze can do when he gets his program his way set up. I've always thought he's a little bit overrated. He got that job based on what he did at Ole Miss, beating Alabama 2 years in a row. But for every game like that, you had a loss to Memphis, a blowout loss to Florida. Even at Liberty, he would have some games where he would have a big win and then he would lose the next week. So he's been very up and down pretty much his entire career, especially his career in the SEC. So it's just really going to depend on how patient they are. As an Alabama fan, I would love to see the chaos because it's just great to see Auburn suffer. But from another standpoint, kind of a more objective standpoint, I think it would be a mistake to fire him after this year because, again, he's brought in some good talent. His biggest sin this year has been sticking with Peyton Thorne for whatever reason that is. But I think he's got a lot of talent coming in. So it will be interesting to see if they let him stick around and work with the talent that he's been brought in, which some of it looks pretty good.
Sigma says that he thinks Alabama's going to win 31-17.
I see that. Yeah, that would be a big win. That would be a surprise, winning by 2 touchdowns like that in Tiger Stadium. I know it's happened before, but new regime and all that. But I think again, this game, there's so much to like and not like about both teams. It's one of those games because you look at the LSU defense; it's not that great, but the Alabama offense is prone to mistakes. They can get themselves in a hole early with those procedural penalties. So, it's just going to be one of those games, one of those classic games where the team that just executes better, that doesn't make the stupid mistakes, that doesn't throw the interceptions, that doesn't commit the dumb penalty. Because I think top to bottom, there's a lot of equal talent when you look at the roster. Both of them have got some great talent at several different positions. So it's going to be just to use their talent better. Alabama's very healthy. They're missing 2 guys. Of course, Keon Saba mentioned. Then the other wide receiver, the kick returner, which he didn't play a lot at wideout. So that's not a huge loss. But LSU has 12 players out. Now, some of those have been out for several weeks, like Harold Perkins and Emory, the running back. But if this game is a grind and depth gets to be an issue, you got to like Alabama a little bit better if that's what occurs.
That's right. Moving on to some more games here. I have a large Oklahoma contingent here. I'm an Alabama guy, but Oklahoma people love me because I grill Lincoln Riley on the regular. Call them the USC Skittle Shitters. That's our little nickname for them. Oklahoma's playing Missouri this week. At the beginning of the year, this looked like it might be maybe possibly a top 15 matchup. Now both teams looking a little worse for wear. I'm not understanding why Missouri's still ranked. I know they're 6-2, but they took 2 horrible losses. They shouldn't be ranked. Vanderbilt dropped out after losing by 3 to Texas. I know they're 5-3, but the committee supposedly said they don't go by record alone. If that's the case, to me, Vanderbilt should be ranked over Missouri, even though Missouri did beat Vanderbilt. But Oklahoma's playing Missouri this week. Oklahoma, I think, really needs this win for Brent Venables because if they don't, this will be the last time that I think that Oklahoma has a realistic shot of winning a game. And if they beat Missouri, Oklahoma will become bowl eligible. And I think that might help take a little bit of the heat off of Brent Venables going forward to get that bowl eligibility. Plus, the Missouri people have been talking mad smack about Oklahoma the whole offseason because they're coming back into the conference with them. And back in the day, Oklahoma used to emasculate them a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was just going to get your thoughts on Oklahoma and Missouri and what do you think about them going forward?
That game is one where a lot of it's going to depend if Brady Cook can play. And I haven't seen the injury report. I don't know what his status is. But, if I think Missouri's like a 1-point favorite. I think that's what the last time I heard some of the guys in Birmingham, the sports station there, talking about that Missouri's a 1-point favorite. And, if Drew Pine plays, I'm not sure. It's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think
half of Missouri's team is out. I mean,
yeah.
Alabama beat a half of a team. That's why I didn't really get really excited about beating Missouri, because it was really just a half a team out there. But yeah, continue on.
But yeah, I think it's going to be low scoring. I mean, the winner might score 20. Being at Missouri's not exactly the most daunting home field in college football.
No, it's not.
Oklahoma is, for all their faults, they've been playing some pretty good defense. If the offense can just make a few plays, just enough to give the defense time to get some rest, in some drives, even in field goals, maybe get a touchdown or two, I think the Sooners can do enough if they do that to win the way the defense is playing. The problem is you have these moments where the defense is just worn out. Like that Texas game, you were looking at them, you're thinking, man, Oklahoma's moving the ball well, they're doing pretty well, and then the bottom just fell out, and the defense held as long as they could, but then they just got worn out. Same thing with the Ole Miss game. The first half, Oklahoma looked really good, even
they were leading. They were leading at halftime, right?
But they just couldn't do anything in the second half. I think they had like 60 or 70 total yards. I know at one point in the second half, I didn't see the end of it, but I know at one point in the second half, they had like 66 total yards, and they just couldn't do anything. And Ole Miss was able to wear them down, wear that defense down, and get into the end zone. If Oklahoma can force a couple of turnovers, I think Missouri committed like 3 or 4 at least against Alabama. No, Pine threw 3 interceptions. But if Oklahoma can do the same, I like them in this game. But it's going to be a hard one to pick because you don't know how that Oklahoma offense is going to respond. But if you put a gun to my head and said pick a team in this one, I think the Sooners win a low scoring one, probably 17-14, 20-13, something like that.
Well, that last touchdown that Oklahoma scored against Ole Miss, where they went up 14-10 on them at halftime, wasn't a lucky drive at all. I think it was maybe a 60 or 70 yard drive, and it looked really good. You could see why Jackson Arnold was maybe a 5-star quarterback at one time, and I was like, damn, maybe he's waking up, maybe he's maturing a little bit. Maybe Oklahoma's about to come around. And then, like you said, in the second half, they just went away. The magic left, the Sooner magic left, as they call it. And in the second half, they didn't do nothing. But there's glimmers there. You can see he's got talent. I just think it's in his head. He's thinking too much. He just don't have enough confidence right now in himself because, he's already been yanked out for the Michael Hawkins guy. And a lot of people, I don't know if this is true or not, they said that Dylan Gabriel was encouraged to leave because Jackson Arnold's daddy and him had threatened to go in the transfer portal. I don't know if that's true or not. But now that's starting to sting a little bit, seeing that Dylan Gabriel's playing the number 1 team, man. He's one of the top 3 candidates for a Heisman Trophy now. That's got to sting a little bit.
Well, I mean, Gabriel would play better than the other 2 guys have. But one thing you have to remember, if your offensive line is bad and Oklahoma's offensive line is bad, you just can't do much on offense. And the wide receivers, for most of the season, they've been playing without their top 5 wide receivers.
That's true.
So, the deck was stacked against them on offense early. They just don't have enough weapons. I mean, pure and simple. And I hope Venables, there's no really any chatter of them getting rid of him or anything like that. But, they fired their offensive coordinator. So that's something that they're going to have to do. I think they hired as an analyst, Dana Holgerson or something like that this week. So he's got some input in the offense. But, they just don't have the talent right now to be productive on offense. Arnold's not playing well. The Hawkins kid, he can run the ball, but he's not a stable passer. And the offensive line has just been bad. They don't have any weapons in the passing game. So you put all that together, and I don't care who you are. If you have all that against you, you're not going to be very good especially playing in a major conference like the SEC.
Yeah, and a lot of fans don't understand all that what you just said. A lot of fans, even diehard Oklahoma fans, aren't really taking all of those extenuating circumstances into account when they talk about we shouldn't have pushed Dylan Gabriel out. Dylan Gabriel might have made Oklahoma more competitive in some of these games. They might have had a chance to beat Tennessee, but he wouldn't have been putting up the numbers he's putting up at Oregon because, like you said, all the injuries and protection issues would hurt anybody.
Yeah, definitely.
So you taking Oklahoma in this game, or?
I think I'm going to take Oklahoma in the low scoring because, again, Missouri's got a lot of injuries themselves. As bad or as inconsistent as Jackson Arnold has been, and a lot of it's going to depend on Brady Cook plays. If Brady Cook plays, I think that definitely they've got Missouri's got a better shot at it. But if both, you got Arnold for Oklahoma, you got Drew Pine for Missouri. I think with the advantage that Oklahoma has on defense, you may see them score on defense. A fumble recovery, pick six, something like that. I think, especially Pine plays, that's going to be the difference of the game. Some kind of defensive play that either Oklahoma scores on or they get the ball deep in Missouri territory.
If y'all don't mind, jump out of the chat and smash the like button. It don't take but 5 seconds. Hit that like button. It pushes the algorithm and get us more people up here tonight. We're a little slow tonight on traffic, but it's because I started so late. That was my fault. Usually I start these things about 7 or 7:30, sometimes even 6:45. Sigma went ahead and got him a little political jab in here. I am unburdened by what didn't happen. Bye, Kamala.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. And I'm not an overly political guy.
What's that whole I'm unburdened crap that she's always talking about? I'm just like, what does that even mean, man? It's like they say word salad. And she's just throwing a bunch of educated words out like a parrot. Anybody can parrot shit, and that's what she is. She's a big old parrot, man.
The only thing I'll say is I have a better time understanding Ed Orgeron than her.
Hey, that's bad, man. Bad time, let's let Trump back up. Go Trump. Sooner JH Travels is in the house. He's got his badge. He's deputized. You'll see people in here with their badges like Sigma and Sooner JH Travels, Terry Sleuth, Eric Taco, Marino. They all got their badges. They're deputized. If you want to be an outlaw posse, it's $2.99 a month, 75 cents a week. It's a little join button next to the subscribe button. You'll get a random Four Horsemen shout out on the actual podcast, as well as possibly be the comment of the day. But Sooner JH Travel says OU is favored now from what he heard.
And that would be, like I said, I heard this was like a couple days ago on one of the Birmingham sports stations that I heard this. And we know how the lines can move. And we know that, Caesar may have it one and, whoever else may have it something else. There's several different these sports books. But the line that I heard a couple of days ago was Missouri by 1. But, yeah, that definitely could have changed because we know how the betting works. It's affected by how the line moves and where the money goes. So, they may be now. I don't know.
Yeah, and like I said, a few weeks ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said Oklahoma was in trouble, that they were probably going to lose to Missouri. But Missouri is just decimated. But Oklahoma's decimated too. So it's like the walking wounded, man. In this game, man, it's the walking wounded bowl, I guess you could call it. Missouri is already bowl eligible since they're 6-2, but Oklahoma isn't, and they definitely need this win because the rest of their schedule doesn't look too promising. They got to play Alabama and then they got to play LSU. But LSU, man, like you said, man, you just don't know what you're getting with LSU, man.
And that's
you don't know what you're getting with LSU.
That's the way it's been for a while because, you saw them, like the COVID year, after the national championship, they weren't looking that great and they go and they beat Florida. You have these games where, they look like world beaters one week and then they're struggling the next. They're a lot like Texas A&M in a lot of ways. The past couple of years, they have these games where they look really good and the offense is clicking. The defense like a few plays enough to win, and then the next week the offense kind of regresses a little, maybe still well enough to win, but the defense can't step up, and they lose like they did against Texas A&M. Because I watched pretty much all that game, and I thought for a while, man, A&M is in trouble. They can't do anything, and LSU is really clicking. And then you had that botched field goal. You had Reed coming in for the Aggies and making all those big runs, and then the wheels kind of fell apart. And a lot of that's coaching. I was in a Facebook group, and I was discussing this game with someone, and somebody said, well, you can't really go by that because LSU didn't prepare for Marcel Reed. Well, if they didn't prepare for Marcel Reed, that's bad coaching because he had played in several games, and, Connor Wegman had not played well the previous week. So, if they were not prepared for the possibility that the Reed was going to come in, then, Brian Kelly and that staff was just not doing their job. You cannot use that kind of mess as an excuse because they should have prepared for him. Now, they will be prepared for Jalen Milroe. How much of a difference that will make, I don't know. Because you can prepare all you want, but if you can't execute, you can't execute. And against running quarterbacks this year, again, I mentioned it before, they have not executed well. And Alabama, they've struggled at times running the ball. The games that they lost, they pretty much just for some reason forgot to run the ball against Vandy, and then they couldn't run the ball against Tennessee. But Tennessee's a lot better defense, especially against the run, than LSU is. So I think you've got to have a steady diet of Milroe to the edge, and you've got to get Justice Haynes and Jam Miller involved in this ball game early.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that South Carolina, what's that guy's name? The one that was giving us so much trouble, the defensive guy, the defensive lineman for South Carolina that everybody's been talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. They've got two guys, a senior and a freshman. It was the senior that was just coming off the edge and just whipping Alabama's offensive line over. And that's one big concern for Alabama because LSU can get to the quarterback. I mentioned before, they're top 10 in the nation in sacks. So the offensive line has got to step up for Alabama to be really confident to win this ball game.
I think everybody saw what Reed did in the second half of Texas A&M, and it was like fool's gold to me. I think it was just a fleeting moment for him. And I told my buddy Jonathan Lewis, I was like, man, South Carolina might beat them next week because that Reed guy, he's not going to know how to handle them South Carolina defensive linemen. You know, if Jalen Milroe had trouble with them,
right?
A young guy like Reed is definitely going to have trouble with them, and especially in Columbia, South Carolina. And sure enough, man, we got what we got, man. It's college football.
You got to love it, man, every week, especially this season. Just a lot of chaos. You never know what's going to happen from week to week. And, we got some games this week, going outside the SEC for a moment. You got this game, I know it's in Bloomington, but Indiana and Michigan, I think that one could be a lot closer than people think. Indiana's
got your second string quarterback, right?
Well, I think the starter's back, but I think last week. But you've got Michigan at Indiana. No one on the Indiana roster has had this kind of success. They're off next week, but the week after, the 23rd, is when they play at Ohio State. If Kirk Cignetti does not have his team ready and focused on Michigan, that dream season could end really quick. I think Indiana probably will win it, but I think it's going to be pretty close. I think the Wolverines are going to give them fits.
They said Indiana tied a school record for wins last week, winning that 9th game, which obviously means they've never been 9-0. So if they win this week, it'll be their first 10-win season in football history. That's crazy. Right. We're here at Alabama. We're whining and bitching if we don't win, 11 or 12 games every year. And these guys haven't won 10 games in 100 years.
Right.
So it sort of puts things into focus a little bit for you, for the Alabama fans out there that are spoiled, and I'm one of them. We're all spoiled a little bit. We're used to it.
Right.
Terry Sleuth has his badge. He's deputized. Oklahoma has won 20 of the last 22 versus Missouri.
Yeah.
That's probably why Missouri has been talking a lot of smack to y'all. They want to let y'all know that they're not the same Missouri that was in the Big 12 back in the day. Now, to be fair to Missouri, a lot of people give them hell and say they shouldn't have been in the conference to begin with. But Missouri actually made the SEC title game 2 years in a row. Texas A&M's never made the title game. So if you're going to get mad about adding somebody in 2012, it should be A&M, not Missouri.
Yeah, and Missouri had a lot of lean years in between, but Eli Drinkwitz has done a good job there. They had that really good season last year with the 11 wins and winning the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State. They've kind of regressed a little this year, but still having a decent season at 6-2, which is a really good year to for that program. But again, there's been so many injuries and just they've had so many tight games. We looked at that Vanderbilt game and we thought, ugh, back then. But now, again, as you mentioned, Vandy's a lot better than anybody feared that they would be. But still, Missouri's got a long road ahead of them with all these injuries. So it's going to be interesting to see where they end up. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if they beat Oklahoma because Oklahoma's just offensively has been so inconsistent. That's a nice way of saying they've been awful. But I still think with that defense. and the struggles Missouri has, especially if Drew Pine is behind center, that they can probably force a couple of turnovers and convert them into points and win this ballgame.
Eric Taco Marino has his badge. He's deputized. She was using alphabet soup to speak. I guess he's speaking of Fraud Mala.
Probably.
Now, there's one team that, and I may be way off base here, and y'all might disagree with me, but there's one team that I think that hasn't really been talked about enough, that's been disrespected, and you wouldn't think that because they're the number one team in the nation. To me, it seems like there's not enough talk about the Oregon Ducks and how they've progressed throughout the year. They went from having a very close game with Idaho, barely beat Boise State. Now we find out Boise State's pretty damn good.
Right.
So Oregon, man, they don't seem to be getting a lot of respect. And I think Dan Lanning's sort of taking that to heart because they said, I saw an article where they said that he already saw what he done with the intentional penalty to screw Ohio State out of town. They made a rule in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
They used to do it with Nick Saban. They used to have to make Nick Saban rules. Well, Dan Lanning has sort of took that tutelage from Saban. He's went one step further. He's got them changing rules in the middle of the year. But the article I saw was talking about he called a timeout in the Michigan game late so that his players could watch the Michigan fans leave the game. This guy's got some Spurrier, Nick Saban stuff going on.
I mean, Lanning, you got to love Lanning. I mean, he's one of those coaches that is good for college football because, he's kind of entertaining. We saw him last year in the Colorado game. They're playing for clicks, we're playing for wins.
Yes.
That was the line of that season. And now this year, the thing with Michigan, that little savvy move with the penalty against Ohio State. I mean, I think Lanning is kind of relishing this role of the Ducks, even though they're ranked number one, being disrespected. I think he's probably telling his team that, like, look, we're not being talked about enough being where we are. Let's make them talk about us. And I think he's using that as motivation. And, with Dylan Gabriel, the way he's playing, with the receivers that they have, with the way the defense has been playing, they're a team that you really have to watch out for. And I think they'll be in really good shape in the playoff. Will they win the national championship? I don't know. But I think that they are a team that definitely could win the national championship, which would be a big boon for them in the first year in the Big Ten, just coming in and taking over and winning the playoff. Again, will it happen? I don't know. With that 12-team playoff, there's a lot more uncertainty. But that is definitely a team you've got to look at and say, yeah, they could do it.
The reason why I bring these glasses up, man, these are my con time Deion Sanders glasses. We always put these on. Everybody here knows what I'm doing. These are little eyeglasses things they give you at the doctor's office so you don't hurt your eyes after your eye exam. But I put my Deion Sanders glasses on so I can hide from the bullshit because that's exactly what to me is con time. Now, he's doing a lot better this year, but he's also got a lot easier schedule. So it's a little misleading. He's bowl eligible now, and he'll probably get considered for some other jobs now. But I still think that I just can't respect him as a head coach for some reason. I just can't find myself to say he's a good coach.
Well, I mean, they're 6-2. Their losses were to Nebraska, which is not looking that great at all. The other one to Kansas State, who got beat last week, and so that's not looking as good. But still, I mean, they've scored 25 points six games in a row, which is the first time they've done that since 1994 when they scored 25.7 in a row. Shedeur Sanders, 6 games in a row, has thrown 250 yards and at least 2 touchdowns, the longest active streak in FBS. So, I mean, there's things there to like about Colorado. They've got to go to Texas Tech this week. They go to Lubbock. They're an interesting team. They are the only team in FBS that has scored 300 points and allowed 300 points. They are the top scoring offense in the Big 12, but they are the worst scoring defense in the Big 12. So that's going to be a really interesting game to watch because Colorado, they're about average. They're right in the middle of the league as far as total defense goes for the Big 12. I think they're 8th out of the 16 teams. So, they are better. They're a lot better than Texas Tech is. But still, Texas Tech has an offense that can put up points, and it's at Lubbock. So, I think this is going to be a game that's a little bit of a make or break for the season for Colorado, because if they win, they keep things going. They only have one loss in conference, so they're right in the mix in that Big 12 conference race. They win the Big 12, they're in the playoff for one of those auto bids. But, if they lose Texas Tech, it's really going to be hard for them to overcome the teams ahead of them, I think. So this is this is not being talked about a lot, but this is a big game in the Big 12 this week, Colorado, Texas Tech.
Yeah, and you say it's in Lubbock, right?
Yeah, it's in Lubbock.
Because Dion was complaining about some kind of tradition that Texas Tech had. I guess he was pissed off about it or something. Maybe it was I think they throw tortilla shells on the field or something.
I didn't hear about that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that's an interesting group over in Lubbock. I mean, they had Mike Leach for a number of years, so they still have that influence there. The old Pirates.
He was aggravated about it. He was pissed off about it for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he's afraid he's going to get hit by a shell or something. I don't know, man.
That seems like there's a lot more things to worth worrying about than that to me. But hey, I don't know. Whatever you do, you prime time.
And then you got people like Stephen A. Smith and other ones that are saying Dion was at Alabama or Florida State or blah, blah, blah team, he would succeed better because he'd have more resources to recruit. Well, here's the thing, Stephen A. He don't recruit. Even at Colorado, he won't go on home visits. So it doesn't matter how many resources you got. If you're unwilling to go on home visits and you're making recruits come to you, it don't matter if you're at Alabama or Florida State. You're going to start losing recruits. Nick Saban is as famous as he is. He used to go in home visits all the time and close deals. So if he gets a big name job somewhere, I fully expect that he'll probably end up like Lincoln Riley. That's what I think.
Very well could be. And with all the messes going on at Florida State right now, Mike Norvell has a really big buyout. So who knows if they can afford to get rid of them this year. But, that's probably going to be a guy the fans are going to clamor for. I don't know how much legs will be there with the administration, with the athletic department. They would want to bring Sanders in. Of course, it will be a big boost as far as notoriety goes. But Florida State, everybody knows who they are already. So there's a certain amount of notoriety that comes with having Deion Sanders as your coach. But there's also a certain amount of headaches at times. And we saw that last year. It's kind of died down a bit because he is winning more. But still, it's going to be interesting to see what he does after the season. Because Travis Hunter is probably going to be gone. Wouldn't surprise me. Shedeur Sanders is gone after this year to go to the NFL. So, who knows if he sticks around with, a lot of his kids gone and kind of, best way to put it is almost his adopted son, Travis Hunter, because they act like he's part of the family at times. But after they clear out, how exactly he's going to want to stay in Boulder.
And to backtrack to Oregon again for a little bit, they got a game this week with Maryland, who's 4-4. Maryland's one of those teams, man. It's just it's sort of like LSU, I guess you could say. You just don't know what you're getting week to week from Maryland. They beat USC, which now is not a big feat. It seems like the USC team has sort of rolled over. Yeah. But to be fair to USC and Lincoln Riley, and I hate doing that because I despise Lincoln Riley, but all the games they've lost, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong about this. You can correct me if I am, but all the games they've lost have been by one score.
I believe that's correct. There's been a lot of close games, and a lot of games they lost last year, were blowouts, double-digit losses.
Right.
They've been a lot of close. The Michigan game was really close. The Maryland game was really close. The bad thing about that is like the Maryland game, they had a pretty good lead in the second half, and they blew it.
They're bad about blowing big leads. Yeah. Lincoln Riley, he done that against Tulane in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, so I mean, they had struggled to keep a lead. Statistically, the defense has been better, which you couldn't have been much worse than they were last year. But still, they're inconsistent. They don't have a Caleb Williams to bail them out. I think I read somewhere where they've replaced their starter. They're going with a new quarterback this week. I can't remember the kid's name, but yeah, the one that started against LSU that looked pretty good then, he's kind of regressed, and they're going with a new quarterback. I think I read that somewhere. But with this Oregon-Maryland game, I don't think it's going to be that close. The game, there's a pretty big talent gap there. The game is at Oregon. I don't know what the line is, but whatever it is, Oregon's going to cover. I think they're just that much better than the Terrapins.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. I was about to backtrack to it, and I was going to ask you if you thought this might be some kind of trap game for Oregon. They're coming off a big win on the road against Michigan. And once again, in name only, is a great win, but nevertheless, people still use it as a feather in their cap kind of deal. I was just going to ask you if you thought maybe they could have a moment where they were just, not really paying attention to this game with Maryland.
I don't think so. I mean, again, you never know what's going to happen, especially this year. But the game being again at home, Oregon's just that much better than Maryland. Maybe they struggle early, but I think by the second half, the depth of Oregon, the play of Dylan Gabriel, the play of the defense that has played pretty well this year. I just don't think Maryland has enough offensive firepower, enough weapons, and enough talent on defense just to be able to keep up in that one.
So they have Maryland this week. I'm looking at their schedule. I got it pulled up. I don't know if y'all can see it, but then they go to Wisconsin, and then they play Washington at home. So their schedule looks really manageable. Now, Wisconsin has been playing better football since they lost to Alabama, but and it's in Camp Randall, so that might be the only chance that Oregon gets upset, in my opinion. But they look like they got a pretty nice path to being undefeated. What do you think?
I think definitely. It would not surprise me at all if they finished the regular season undefeated. And it looks like right now, Indiana's a great story, but I still hesitate to pick them to beat Ohio State in Columbus on the 23rd in a couple of weeks. So it would not shock me at all if we see a rematch of Oregon and Ohio State, and that game will not be at Oregon this time, be in Indianapolis. So they're a playoff team and they'll make the playoff. But I still think that Big Ten championship game could be an obstacle for them to finish undefeated going to the playoff. But we'll see. Again, Oregon is definitely a national championship contender. They are one of the teams that definitely can win it all, and I really like their chances. But they've got some work to do, and a potential rematch with Ohio State could be an obstacle, but we know how Ryan Day does in big games against top 5 teams. So, we'll see.
Unless he's playing someone that's worse at it, like Penn State.
Yeah, exactly.
And James Franklin, I don't know if you saw the video or not after the game, man, he was arguing with the fans in the stands. Penn State guy was calling him out about something, and he's like, "What's your name? Give me your name. What's your name?" And I'm like, that don't look like a head coach doing that.
No.
That's somebody that doesn't need to be a head coach. What do you need his name for? Are you going to go to his house? Or are you going to ban him from the stadium for having an opinion?
And I think that just shows how in over his head sometimes that James Franklin is. Yeah, he's had success at Penn State as far as winning a number of games, but you get in those certain games like Ohio State, Michigan, the years they play them, he just doesn't do well. He does not do well in big games. And you see that frustration. He gets in over his head, and the fans are booing him going off the field, and he gets frustrated and he lashes out. And as a head coach, you just can't do that. You've got to be better than that. You've got to be able to filter out that noise. You take the loss, you regroup, you get to the locker room, you talk to your team. Penn State still has a lot of their goals ahead of them. They could still make the playoff. Probably won't make the Big Ten championship game because there's too many teams ahead of them like Ohio State and Oregon, but still they're not mathematically eliminated yet. And so the path to a championship is still there. So he's got to filter out this noise and be a better example to his team and show them that we can get past that. He was not getting past that when he was walking off the field. He was too busy yammering with the fans. And as a head coach, you can never do that. Really, really just a poor form by James Franklin when that happened.
Yeah, I just don't think you'd see someone like Ryan Day or Nick Saban or a number of coaches take the time to do that. No. It seems so bush league to me in a way. I mean, someone like me or you to do that, that's fine.
Right.
We're not making $10 million a year to act right. So, Sandy Green says Dylan has earned a good year with the Ducks. Hopefully he gets a high draft for the NFL. I think Dylan's made his money in college, and I don't think it's going to be much more than that in the NFL. In my opinion, I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I think after he leaves Oregon, he may be a journeyman quarterback, sort of like A.J. McCarron. But as far as being starter somewhere. I could be wrong. I've seen stories before where you didn't think a person was going to be a starter and they end up being a starter. But I think Dillon's probably hit his ceiling as far as quarterback star, whatnot. What do you think?
I can see that. I mean, again, we won't know until it happens. The way that quarterbacks are valued in the NFL, it wouldn't surprise me if he's a late first round or an early second round pick. So somebody's going to take a chance on him. They're going to take a chance on him pretty high. But I just don't know if the way he plays is conducive to the grind of the NFL. So we'll just see what happens there. But Gabriel is talented. I love the way he plays. Great competitor. But yeah, I think he's one of those where it would not surprise me at all if, as you said, he's kind of a journeyman QB.
1989M, he's our resident Michigan guy. He said Con Time is going to catch a wreck down in Lubbock. I hope so. I hope you're right, man. I hope he catches one of them tortilla shells right across the face and knocks some glasses off or something.
Well, again, that game, and they played pretty well against Iowa State last week, giving the Hawkeyes their first loss. But there's going to be games where you're going to have to stop people, and I'm not sure if I can trust Texas Tech enough to make those stops. But it could be a very high scoring game. It could be one of those where the team with the ball last wins. And if that's Texas Tech, then it wouldn't shock me if they pull it off. But still, it's not one of those that I'm just like, oh my gosh, upset alert. Colorado's really in danger. But it's one of those games they very well could lose.
That's right. And I don't know how old you are, but back in the day, if you saw Nebraska playing USC anytime, whether it be regular season or bowl game, you're thinking, man, that's an epic matchup. That's a great matchup. Both these teams are trending sort of downward. I think Nebraska's 5-4 and USC's 4-5. I think this game's sort of like the Oklahoma-Missouri game in a way that the winner of this game might be able to, catch a little momentum and go to a bowl game, and the other team's going to be sitting at home. And it could do wonders for either one of those head coaches to at least try to win this game and get bowl eligible. I don't know how much longer they're going to put up with Lincoln Riley. I think that Nebraska's coach, Matt Rule, probably has a little more slack in the chain. He might be able to take this loss and not have to worry about the hot seat. But USC, I think if they lose this game in Nebraska, you could be looking at USC looking to try to buy Lincoln Riley out.
I mean, it's an interesting scenario there in Los Angeles because, they hired him from Oklahoma. They had such high hopes. That first year they made the Pac-12 championship game. Caleb Williams was not healthy in that championship game. They go to the Cotton Bowl. Yeah, they blow it. But, there was some optimism there. And all that was wiped away last season with the finish they had. And then now you have this year, and they started out beating LSU, and everybody was talking about them. And, I think it was, that guy on Fox, Cowherd or whatever his name is, was just harping on him, which he harps about him all the time because he's a USC homer. But he was just, singing their praises. And now we're coming to the end of the season, and they're in a lot of trouble. And I don't know what his buyout is, but I don't think that USC is going to put up with this much longer. He might get one more year.
Yep.
And he might choose to leave on his own. Because he doesn't strike me as the guy that really wants to stick around for adversity. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him as an assistant in the NFL next year, as maybe an offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach.
So like Chip Kelly did, maybe get away from the pressure.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise.
Because the buyout is like right now it's $88 million. That's more than Texas A&M had to spend on Jimbo. And I think the Oklahoma buyout's like $44 million. The Oklahoma people were saying, we can't afford to buy Brent Venables out. I'm like, y'all don't know what a real buyout is. An $88 million buyout's got y'all literally doubled.
Yeah.
But when big donors get involved, man, surprisingly, they can find that money somehow. But
you've got these boosters that are willing to write these big checks and get things done. And that's at a number of major universities. I mean, you look at SMU, and, this isn't a buyout situation, but you look at SMU and the year they've had with NIL, they've got some boosters that have stepped up and been willing to spend some money. And they are in the thick of the ACC championship race in their first year. They've got some good talent. They're playing really good football. I mean, they beat the snot out of Pittsburgh. who was undefeated last week.
You're talking about SMU, right?
Just whipped them. And
Pony Express is coming back.
Yeah, and they've got one loss. They lost, I think it was like 15-13 or 16-14 or something like that. Maybe it was 19. It was a close loss to BYU, which has been another surprise team. But that's been their only loss this year. And they are undefeated in conference play. And now with Clemson having two losses on the season, that one loss in conference, and who knows how they're going to finish up. But SMU's right in the thick of the ACC playoff race or championship race, and they could very well be a playoff team their first year in that league.
It's like we got in a DeLorean with Marty and Doc and went back to 1984 because all these crazy things happened in 1984 too. BYU was undefeated, won the national championship,
right.
The last real G5 school to win the national championship. And then you had Vanderbilt beat Alabama in 1984, and then they beat us this year. By the way, that was on my birthday on homecoming in 1984, so I still remember this. It traumatized me a little bit. But and also I saw a stat. This is a little bit off topic, but when Vanderbilt beat Auburn, it was the first time they had beat them in Auburn ever in like 100 years. They played them like 9 times in Auburn, and also they hadn't beat Alabama and Auburn in the same season since 1955.
It's just a testament how crazy the season has been. Again, you got Vanderbilt playing well, the SMU, BYU, all these teams that have stepped up, and so many teams that have disappointed. You get Florida State and just how awful that has been.
And SMU was good in 1984.
Yeah, and it's weird, but this season has been crazy. And now you have this 12-team playoff, and we're probably going to see some upsets in that. You're going to have one of these lower seeded teams that's going to be hot. Maybe have just gotten into the playoff by the skin of their teeth, playing really well at the time. That may be facing a team that maybe lost their last game, and the first loss or just second loss of the season, and they still get in, but they're not playing well, and they could run into a buzzsaw. I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all if you saw a 12 over a 5 or the 10 over the 7.
This ain't like college basketball where a 16 seed beats a 1. That's happened, but it's very unlikely. Now, in college football, even if they went to 16 teams, which is probably going to happen eventually, a 16 beating a 1 wouldn't be that big of a deal in college football because of the parity.
Right. Exactly. But, I'm loving this college football season. Of course, being an Alabama fan, I wish we didn't have those 2 losses, or the team didn't have those 2 losses. But still, I do overall. I think Kalen DeBoer's got a good vision for the program. He's recruiting well, and they've still got a shot at the playoff. Which I think in a first year like that's with especially as many guys that lost to the portal, I think you could consider that season a success. I don't think they're a national championship contender right now. There's too many teams ahead of them. Even though they beat Georgia, I think that. Georgia, the way they're playing right now, could win it. I think Oregon could. Despite their troubles against higher-ranked teams over the years, I think Ohio State definitely has the talent to do it. I think there's probably maybe 5 or 6 teams that you could look at and say, yeah, they've really got a shot at it. But any of the teams that make it in the 12-team field, if they get hot, we could see a surprise. And that's what we love about college football. And I think I was a little skeptical when they started talking about this expansion, because for so many years we saw with the 4-team, the semifinals being just blowouts. But I think with the parity that we're seeing in this game now, I think the 12-team format is really going to be a good thing for the sport.
Yeah, nobody really looks dominant this year. There's not that one team that you can say can't be beat. Even Oregon at number 1 doesn't look unbeatable. I mean, just look at how they played against Idaho. But let me get to this comment, or this donation, actually. Sooner JH Travels, John, has just gifted 5 Outlaw of Common Folk memberships to 5 lucky members. I don't know who you give them to, but I appreciate the hell out of that. That helps out the channel a lot. So, yeah, if y'all ever want to gift a membership to anybody in here, be my guest. I'll take more posse members. We got plenty of badges to deputize y'all with. But going back to that Nebraska USC game for just a second. So who do you think comes out the winner in that game?
I haven't really looked at that game at all, so I can't make a great guess. But I think that Nebraska, despite their struggles, I think that they still have faith in Matt Rule and what he can do. I'm not sure USC has any faith left in Lincoln Riley. And I think that could be reflected in the play. So I think if you just made me pick a team, I would say Nebraska in a close one.
Yeah, I would actually hope that you're right about that, just because I dislike USC with a passion. And if he loses that game, I don't know if there's any more wins on the schedule for them. They got to play Notre Dame, right?
Yes, I think the Notre Dame game is the last game of the season.
They play Notre Dame. They may play, I don't know, they might play UCLA. That might be their saving grace, because UCLA sucks too. But UCLA did beat Nebraska. Yeah. I couldn't believe that Nebraska messed around and let them beat them in Lincoln. That was so crazy, man.
Again, Nebraska is one of those teams where you look at them and there's some things to like, but they have a true freshman quarterback. The kid has some talent, but you see him at times. He just looks lost out there. He has these streams where he's not playing well offensively. They're not that good. Maybe they can get there, but it's still a young team. It's still a team that's figuring things out. I think long term, they're never going to go back to the Tom Osborne days. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I think Matt Rule can make them competitive. I think they could be a team that maybe makes the playoff once or twice in his tenure. But it's such a different world from when Nebraska was dominant, and they never will get back to that point like they were with Tom Osborne.
I agree with that. I think that they joining the Big Ten didn't help them either. I think it hurt their recruiting base. The recruiting base was based out of Texas mostly, and a lot of parents don't want to send their kids to play Nebraska and watch them travel to Rutgers and Maryland and places like that. Nebraska had joined the SEC. That probably would have been a better fit for them, even though they're not really in the southeastern demographic. But neither is Missouri, really. I guess you could say Missouri's not really southeastern. But I think that joining the Big Ten sort of hurt them. When they done it at the time, you thought, well, Nebraska's going to go over and dominate, and it just never happened. I think when they got rid of Frank Solich, that was the start of their demise.
That was a big mistake. I mean, Solich was he was not Tom Osborne, of course, but they had some really good years with him, and they even made one or two Big Ten championship games under him, I believe. I know one time they lost to Wisconsin in the championship game, but yeah, I mean that was a mistake firing him, but that was so long ago.
They had the Dominican Sue, and that year they should have beat Texas, and they had the second back on the clock for Colt McCoy and them to make it to the title game against Alabama. That was one of those games that might have helped put Bo Pelini over the top, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah,
Bo Pelini could have probably been a great head coach had he had some mannerisms about, sort of like Will Muschamp, man. Everybody thought Will Muschamp was the next big thing, and that dude just can't control his temper. So it's good to have someone with a little animation, but sometimes you can take it over the top just a tad.
Yeah, and he did often. But it should be another great weekend of college football. A lot of good games. Of course, the ones I'll be watching closely will be, of course, Georgia and Ole Miss, and then the one we talked about the most, Alabama at LSU. And it should be another great weekend.
But we forgot about Georgia and Ole Miss. What do you think about that game?
It's one of those where until Lane Kiffin wins that game, what I'm talking about.
He's just like James Franklin. They're like two mirrors, him and James Franklin.
Until he wins that big game, when it comes to the games like this, I'm Missouri. I'm the show me guy. Show me you can do it before I have faith in you. And Lane Kiffin has not shown us that he can do it. So I think that you got to go with Georgia in this game. But Carson Beck's got to play better. It's eventually going to cost them. It may not cost them this week, but you get to the SEC championship, you get to the playoff game. If he keeps throwing passes to the other team, they're going to find a game where they're going to get beat. He threw a couple of interceptions against Alabama. They got beat. So that's going to happen eventually. Again, it may not be this week, but you talk about Ole Miss, you talk about the offense. They've got a really good defense. They get to the quarterback a lot, so they have the ability to beat Georgia. It would not shock me if they do, because they can get pressure on Beck. Georgia still has not been running the ball that great, so opponents can focus on stopping the pass more than the run. But Beck's got to play better. The defense is playing better. They're going a little more to the Georgia standard the past few weeks than we've seen earlier in the season. But still, you watch this team, and Beck has got to play better. The defense has got to keep their standard going. And again, I mentioned it before, that magic number, 285 yards passing. If Ole Miss gets around 300, I think the Bulldogs are in trouble. But I'm going to pick Georgia just for the simple fact that we have not seen Lane Kiffin step up and win a game like this.
Yeah, it's just like I said with James Franklin. Him and James Franklin remind me of each other so much. Plus, they both like to talk mad smack all the time. They're always prodding somebody, and then they end up not being able to back it up. So if he wins the game against Georgia, that'll be that moment for Lane. Because if you can get that moment, sometimes it all starts to come a little easier.
Right.
And sometimes you just never get that moment. And I'm like you. Until he does it, I'm going to say he can't do it. So, that's just the way it is. Well, all right, brother, I've kept you long enough tonight. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. I know you probably got some things going on with your family and whatnot, but I appreciate you coming on here and taking a little time out of your schedule for us. And you've been a really good guest tonight. You've been really fluid and really educated about college football, and that's what we like around here.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak out. And once again, if you guys want to check out the Facebook groups that I'm an admin in, College Football Universe, and then my other one, Southern Sports Focus, just search those. Would love to have you on. We have a lot of great sports talk. Of course, with any Facebook group, especially the College Football Universe, there's a little bit of trolling and smack you got to wander through sometimes. But still, a couple of great groups there. Would love to have you guys a part of it. And Outlaw, man, I've enjoyed this immensely, talking some college football with you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, brother, let's do it again.
Will do.
All right, take care.
You too.
And that was Jeremy Smith from College Football Universe. It's a Facebook group. He also does some Facebook Lives like I do on here, except he does them on Facebook. Very well-spoken guy, very knowledgeable about college football. Doesn't get much better than Jeremy Smith talking college football. He's been a guy I've been wanting to get on here for quite a while, and we finally were able to make it work. And he got on here, and he laid some knowledge on us tonight, and I appreciate the hell out of it, Jeremy. But before I get out of here, do any of y'all have any comments you want to make? If you got any questions for me, just if you want to, you can make a little donation to the program at the bottom. It'll push you to the top, and I'll get to your question above everybody else's little money dollar sign. Click on it, write your comment out. Hit send and make a little donation to the program. Jeremy Smith is awesome, says NIL Commish. NIL Commish also says, I was just saying hi to Brendan. I put a quote from Dave Chappelle in there. You're a good man doing that. Yeah, we appreciate the hell out of the donation tonight. Sooner JH travels. It is the season of giving coming up, right? We're on Thanksgiving, we're on Christmas, and Senator J.H. travels. John says, ho, ho, ho. Here's you some memberships. Ho, ho, ho. Time to get deputized. Ho, ho, ho. Time to get that random four-horseman shout-out with possibly being the comment of the day. Just hit the join button, next subscribe button, and you'll be in the Outlaw Posse, and you'll be badged up, deputized, all that good shit. Well, I'm glad you're back, right, guy, but you missed the good talk we had about Oregon. Yeah, when we get off of here tonight, this live stream will upload the podcast. So if you want to go back and look at the topics here, Alabama, Oklahoma, Oregon, LSU, Texas, Nebraska, USC, and Florida, we talked about all those teams tonight. We had a real good long conversation on Oregon. I've been meaning to do that for the Oregon Duck fans in here that come in here all the time. Them and the Oklahoma fans are hardcore. They support me even more than my own fan base. I got a few people from my fan base up in here, but Oklahoma, Oregon, Nebraska, LSU, all four of those fan bases are some of my best supportive fan bases because they're just rabid, passionate fans, man. That's what makes this channel so much fun. Rider Guy 1218 says Ole Miss kind of seems all talk and not much action. Just like we said, he's sort of like James Franklin. He can win all the games he's supposed to, except for Kentucky. He didn't win that one. But after that, it's a pop shot with Lane Kiffin. You don't know what you're getting with old Laney boy. Senator JH Travel says, yeah, come back, man, talking to Jeremy Smith. Senator JH Travels also says, no problem, man. Hopefully they will renew. Yeah, that's the main thing. If I can get them to renew, because at one time I had gotten this thing up close to 100 memberships, but it was people gifting them out like you did. And when their renewal come up, they didn't renew. But like I said, it's not but $2.99. I don't have special prices for other things. I don't try to price gouge like some of these channels do with we got a $2.99 and a $3.99 and a $5.99, and they're all the same. I'm just gonna let y'all know. I'm just gonna let y'all know, man. They're all screwing you on that. So just go with the cheapest membership. Go with $2.99. If they got a $2.99 on one of your other favorite channels, go with that. What I would do, because it's not but 75 cents a week. That's just a half a bottle. Right now it's down to a half a bottle, less than a half a bottle. Half a bottle of water for the Outlaw, 75 cents. If you can spare 75 cents a week, that would be absolutely great. Well, all right. I guess this is it. KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.